Welcome to the Clear Admit MBA Admissions Podcast. I'm Graham Richmond, and this is your wiretaps for Monday, August 16th, 2021. I'm joined by Alex Brown from Cornwall, England. Alex, how are things going this week?
Very good, thank you, Graham.
So it's probably not the same as the beach you go to, but I did actually get down to the Jersey Shore, or as Philadelphians like to say, I went down the shore. I don't know why people say that, but that's the way people speak here. So managed to get into the ocean for the first time in a while, and that was terrific. The water here is quite warm, probably warmer than it is in Cornwall, I'm guessing.
Yeah, I don't go swimming.
So what's been going on the MBA side of things for you?
It's pretty quiet. I mean, obviously on our site particularly, really the activity is on Applywire. People sort of posting their profiles, as we'll feature 3 of them today. In terms of people gearing up to the round 1 deadlines, which, honestly, Graham, aren't too far away. So hopefully people are getting excited about that.
Yep.
The only other thing, we didn't talk about this before coming on air, but to let you know, I've been looking at our admissions book in terms of getting it updated, and I reread it, Graham. I think it's absolutely fantastic.
No, you did write it, right, Alex?
I did write it too, but I do still think it's fantastic.
No, I know. I do too. And as I edited it, if I remember, I kind of helped along the way. And
yes.
Yeah, I think it's a great summary of what people need to know. Yeah. So I'm glad you're kind of getting that up to date. It's been a little while since you've updated it, so it's great.
Yeah, there's really very few edits to make, though, quite frankly, Graham.
Good.
And I think it provides an absolutely fantastic roadmap for folks. It's strategic rather than tactical.
Yeah.
But a great roadmap.
Yeah, I agree. And you can get it on the website. So if people are wondering, you can just go on the website and download it. But yeah, I'm glad that that's getting updated. We also, speaking of which, we've been putting a lot of stuff out on the site. We talked about the importance of being able to tell your recommenders what questions they're going to be asked when they go to fill out these recommendation forms. And so as a service, ClearAdmit always shares these letters because they're kind of buried in the school websites or often not even available to the applicant to see, what questions are being asked. So we posted rec questions for Cornell, Duke, ESADE, Minnesota Carlson, Oxford, Rice, Stanford, and UCLA over the last week or so. And we've also been tracking, deadlines. Most schools have published their deadlines or essay topics at this point, but there were a couple of stragglers. So we've got deadlines up now for BC, Notre Dame, JHU Cary, Rochester, and Washington University's Olin School of Business.
What about Marshall? Are they in the house yet?
I don't know. I don't know if I've seen them yet. I'd have to double check.
They are notoriously late.
I know. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's just, Southern California, laid back. They're taking their time. But yeah, I have to look and see. I don't know if that's out yet or not. So other stuff on the site that we've got going is that Ross announced a healthcare accelerator for students in the business school. So that was kind of cool. They just launched this healthcare thing, which I guess will help solidify their strengths in healthcare. We often talk about some of the other top schools that do healthcare stuff, but it sounds like they're making strides there, which is very cool. We also did a piece on the site about HEC and their Women in Leadership Club. They have a lot of activity with that group, and it really helps women to kind of, launch their careers, which was cool. And then we did a piece, I know we talked about this last week, but in the interim, we've actually done a piece about Wharton welcoming the first class that has a majority of women in it, which is very cool. So we did a little piece on that, which I don't know if you had a chance to peruse yet, Alex. I think it just came out, so I'm not sure if you saw that.
I haven't, but that's one of the very small edits that'll go into the new admissions update book. New update for the admissions book, because we talk about the gender parity issues. I'm going to ask you a quick question about Ross, though, Graham. Does that put Ross on par with Duke now as a healthcare management program, do you think?
Ooh, good question. I honestly, I don't know. I'd have to look more carefully, and I would recommend anyone, who wants to do healthcare and is applying to school, I would look very carefully at some of the placement statistics. But I think there is, one of the things people often forget is most of these business schools are part of larger universities with track records in many other domains. And I think that, University of Michigan obviously has a lot going on in healthcare. So it wouldn't surprise me. But again, I don't know enough. I haven't done any recent research into, Duke versus Ross in terms of healthcare.
Right.
But it certainly helps, I think, that Ross is doing more in this domain.
But what we do know is Duke and Ross are the two most similar business schools in terms of cross applications of any business schools in the top tiers.
Yeah, it's very interesting. We see that year in and year out that those are the two schools that they have the most overlap with applicants, which is fascinating to me. But I guess it makes sense when you think about Stanford and Harvard and Wharton all sit sort of at the top, presumably, right? But there's less overlap. There are a lot of people who apply to like Harvard and Wharton, but maybe not Stanford. And there might be people who only apply to Stanford or Harvard. But in any event, yeah, we just see a lot of overlap with both Ross and Duke for some reason. Yeah.
Very good.
Yeah. So the other stuff that's I wanted to mention is that we have more admissions director Q&As coming on the podcast. I've got some on the calendar to record, so stay tuned. We're going to get to more of the top MBA programs. I'm going to be sitting down with some folks, and yeah, we'll get those out as soon as we can. We also have a whole new slate of events coming. So we have a webinar on the 15th of September that's going to be about career switching, like using the MBA to career switch. And we're doing that, I guess, in partnership with Georgia, with Terry School of Business. And then we've got a series of essay events, just like the ones we did back in July, where we're going to do 3 events, September 22nd, 29th, and October 6th. And it's, again, a who's of top business schools. We've got Berkeley, UNC, Columbia, Cornell, Ross, UT Austin, UCLA, Duke, Tepper, Yale, and then Stanford, Chicago Booth, NYU Stern, INSEAD, and LBS. So they're all taking part on different dates in that calendar of essay events. And I encourage people to sign up for those in advance. You can do so on our website. It should be a lot of fun, though. I love these events. And I know the candidates have been really enjoying this opportunity to really hear us kind of I don't know what the word is, really probe the admissions directors at these schools on why they ask these essay questions, what advice they have specifically for candidates as they sit down to write them. So that should be fun. And I recognize that's going to largely be for the round 2 crowd or people who are, working on applications at that point. But should be fun. I'm looking forward to that.
And this is Stanford's first participation in these events. Is that right, Graham?
Yeah, as far as I know, yeah, they're going to be,
Yeah.
So they join Wharton and other top schools.
Oh, that's huge.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
A lot of fun. It'll be fun to have them on board. Yeah.
Yeah. As you know, I'm a huge fan of their main essay.
Yeah.
So yeah, you really need to push Stanford and probe them. I want to hear what they're going to say.
Yeah, they have a lot of good stuff to say, I'm sure, because my conversation with Kirsten Moss on the admissions director Q&A that we ran out a couple weeks back, she gave some good tips, and I'm sure there's more that'll come out, when we sit down and have that live session. So it should be fun. The other thing is we'll be on Clubhouse Thursday at noon Eastern as usual. We haven't had any reviews of our podcast in a while, Alex, or ratings. So I'm a little disappointed in our faithful followers. I mean, they all post to ApplyWire, but it'd be great to get some reviews.
They've all rated us, Graham.
Yeah, maybe that's
we need new listeners, I think.
Yeah, maybe everyone that listens has already written a review. That would explain it. Yeah. But anyway, if anyone wants to get in touch with us, you can always send an email to info@clearadmit.com. Use the subject line wiretaps. And Alex, otherwise, I think we can get into our candidates for this week. I know that you're excited to talk about these. It's a good group that you've picked out, as always. So anything else from you, or should we move right along here?
No, let's kick on.
All right, so this is Wiretaps candidate number 1. So this is an ApplyWire entry that we received, and it's for a candidate who is actually targeting a start of fall 23. So they have a lot of time. They've got 7 schools on their target list, and those schools are Berkeley, Columbia, Harvard, Michigan, UT Austin, UVA, and Yale. And this candidate's been working in supply chain and consulting, and they would love to be in kind of a consulting role, or maybe even with a consumer goods company or auto company, aerospace, after business school. And they gave some companies that they might target, which include the likes of BCG and McKinsey, but also Pepsi, Procter & Gamble, and Unilever. So they seem open still in terms of a post-MBA goal. Their GPA was a 3.3. They've got 4 years of work experience, and they are located in Poland. They would love to land in the U.S. after business school, at least for a few years, I believe they said. And they did indicate in their notes, they provided a lot of details, which we'll get into, but I wanted to share just one thing that they said, Alex, which is, "Hi, love your show, really makes me believe in myself and my goals. End quote. And I thought that was just so sweet to hear that. Like I just, that makes me, I know, feel really good that we're helping people to kind of navigate this process and to feel the confidence that they should have, as they kind of enter the MBA admissions process. But I thought that was cool, Alex.
No, that's absolutely fantastic. And they should have confidence in what they're doing, quite honestly, Graham, having read their apply wire entry. So shall we dissect it?
Yeah, so there was a lot of additional information here, but in essence, a couple of things. They did an engineering degree at a university for economics, and it sounds like they had a good progression with their grades. They have a 3.3 in total, but it's an upward trend. They started a master's degree in the Netherlands at a top 3 kind of tech university in Europe, they say. But they had some kind of a family situation that meant returning to Poland and basically abandoning that degree. So they did wonder about that. And they also had a comment about how they're not so sure that people in supply chain really do MBAs as a rule. They made a comment, I'm looking for it, but somewhere they said, I see that MBAs are not that popular among supply chain people, and I would like to change that trend. So anyway, there's a lot to sort of unpack here, but what do you make of the candidacy overall? And then maybe we can get into some of these questions that they have about their abandoned degree and the sort of supply chain stuff.
Yeah, I mean, let's start by talking about the real positives here, I think. And I think the positives lie in the work experience. It looks like they've done very well on the supply chain side, but they've worked sort of in market on supply chain. I mean, I presume from Poland, but nevertheless, some really good sort of industry experience. And then they switched to the consulting side, working MBB consulting, focusing on supply chain, or at least that's my understanding. And if that's the case, that seems pretty highbrow experience. They're going to need to show impact along the way, but I'm sure that they can do that, especially given that they then got that switch into MBB. So to me, that looks like a super strong element of the candidacy. They're also a professional swimmer, which sounds very good. We just watched the Olympic Games, Graham. And I think I'm a little bit like Adam Peaty. I was just a little off his pace in my career trajectory, but I mean it's you're reviewing someone that was a professional swimmer just after the Olympics. It sort of frames it a little bit differently, but anyone that was a professional sports person, I think you have to have shown lots of commitment to something outside of work in that regard. Despite your success or lack thereof, that sort of commitment and resilience and perseverance as a professional sportsman, I think that's very good. So those two elements are good. The 3.3 GPA, yeah, it's a little ho-hum. Maybe on the engineering side, it's not so bad. And this notion of starting a master's degree and then abandoning, you could potentially think, well, that could be a red flag. My advice to the candidate is, use that optional essay, explain the family circumstance that took you back to Poland, I think from the Netherlands. I think they said they were, but I could have got that wrong. But just be very upfront and open about it. And I think, quite frankly, ADCOM is going to be perfectly fine with that, especially if you're also going to present a high GMAT score. And they say they're targeting 730 plus, Graham, which, again, is a ridiculously high score for anybody. So if they do hit that 730 mark or 700 plus mark, I mean, that's going to be very good. This comment about supply chain post-MBA career goal and sort of changing that perception might be more to do with top-tier MBA candidates less inclined to go into supply chain rather than supply chain not wanting MBA candidates. So I do think it's great that this person has found their sort of real passion in terms of supply chain, and they're going to go back into it. That's very, very good. So quite frankly, Graham, I think there's a lot to like here. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
I like this candidate.
Yeah, I think so. Two quick things. One is, yeah, they haven't taken the GMAT. That's why I didn't mention a score, but they're aiming for like 730 plus, which you, as you point out, would be terrific. And in conjunction with a 3.3 in engineering, the thing I also want to just underline, it may be silly, is that this is someone who lives in Poland, which is not a common market for sending lots of people to top business schools. So they're gonna, they just have a feather in their cap for being in Poland alone. Like that's going to help, assuming that they are Polish as well. I presume it's not like an American living in Poland, but even if they are, it's still a distinctive thing, right? So there just aren't a ton of candidates from that market. That'll help them a lot. And then they work for one of the MBB firms, which, obviously that's great as well. And presumably they may go back to working for one of those firms. I don't know if there's a possibility for sponsorship, but that always helps too. All this to say, I think this is a great candidate. They seem to have a good head on their shoulders. They know what they want to do. And I could not agree more. I mean, every leading business school has an operations supply chain major or department. And so I don't think that industry doesn't value MBAs. I think you're right. It's just that most people posting on ApplyWire or looking at top business schools are always talking about, oh, I want to work in consulting, or I want to work in tech, or maybe banking. I'm going to start my own company. And so people don't often talk about operations and supply chain, even though, as COVID has pointed out, or even the Suez Canal incident with the ship, operations and logistics are incredibly important and can really throw a wrench in the works if they're not well managed. We've had these chip shortages. Like there's a lot of work to be done in this domain, and it's important work. So I think this is a great candidacy, and they have a year to prepare before they start writing their essays and everything. So they're in really good shape, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I just add the caveat to what you just said, Graham. A lot of military candidates will target operations as a sort of medium term goal coming out of MBA.
Yeah.
But other than the military candidates, yes, we don't see too many highly qualified candidates that are looking to target operations management and supply chain. So yeah, I think it's super interesting, Graham.
Yeah, agreed. So this person has a lot of ways in which they stand out. Again, thanks to them for posting and for the kind words about the podcast. Good luck as they travel down this path. But let's move on and talk about Wiretap's candidate number 2. So this is another ApplyWire entry. This candidate wants to start business school in the fall of 22. They've got schools, they have 4 schools on their list, so Berkeley, Duke, Michigan, and UCLA. This person's been working in consulting and would like to get into consumer goods, and the companies on the target list are General Mills, Nike, Pepsi, Procter & Gamble, Unilever, and The Wonderful Company, which I'm not familiar with. And then they've got a GRE score of 326 and a GPA of 374. 5 years of work experience. They're located in New York and they want to land in LA. Now, I did want to mention that they retook that GRE. And so this entry actually came to us, I think, back in June, Alex. But we responded and gave them feedback on their plans. But they then posted the other day to say, I just retook the GRE and got a 329 with a 170 on the quant and a 159 on the verbal. And for those of you keeping score at home, that means a 96th percentile on the math and a 82nd percentile on the verbal. They are an Asian American, they're LGBTQ plus, and they're actually applying, they mentioned via the consortium, as an ally. So I'll kind of leave it there, Alex, but they asked us, should they retake the 329? They were kind of not sure if it's worth retaking a 4th time. I don't know why they asked that, but I'll let you comment on that. And they're just wondering about their chances overall now that they have this new score, etc.
Yeah, I mean, a couple of things I want to focus on here, Graham, let's assume, and I'm assuming, that they have good work experience. I think that's probably going to be the case. It's, they've got a couple of, or 3 years of crisis management consulting and 3 years of human capital consulting. So it sounds like they've probably done very well. And they got a 374 GPA. So I'm a big believer. I love the GPA piece of it, Graham, right? Because that's 4 years of academic record. They've obviously done very well academically. And their GRE score is very good, right? And I want to talk about this retake in a minute, actually, because I think that's important. So that's my second question back to you. But my first question back to you, Graham, is why isn't this candidate applying to Kellogg? It seems to me like a program like Kellogg, which is, I'd say, a tier above the schools they're currently targeting, is right in this candidate's wheelhouse.
Yeah, that is a good point. I mean, I think obviously they've got UCLA and Berkeley on the list because they indicate they want to land in California, ideally in LA, and so I get those two. But you're right. If you think about their career plans and this idea of doing working in consumer goods, I mean, Kellogg is usually kind of leading the pack there. So it's sort of conspicuously absent from the list, and I'm not sure why. Actually, it's a school that I would encourage them to investigate. I don't know if it's because it's not a consortium school and they're applying via the consortium, but then I look at the list and I think Duke and UCLA are not members of the consortium either. So yeah, I'm kind of scratching my head about that. Yeah, could be a good place to start. I mean, I agree with you.
I think Anderson is a member of the consortium, or at least they're indicating Anderson is a member of the consortium. But yeah, I'm not sure about Duke. But it just seems to me that this candidate should have M7 in their target range.
Yeah.
So whether it's Kellogg and maybe even one or two others, as well as the schools they have. I mean, these are all very good programs, but you want to make sure that you're sort of maximizing your reach in the process.
Yeah.
So to this other point, Graham, they had a 326 GRE, and that's a very good score, right? It's a 160 verbal and a 166 quant. Is what they scored.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know that we advised them to retake the GMAT in the first GRE in the first go around, but in any event, they decided to do it, and well done to them because they boosted the score. And at the end of the day, a better score is always going to be helpful, or at least you would assume that's the case. So they jumped it up from a 326 to a 329. But interestingly, they boosted the quant score by they boosted the quant score by 4 points, and they dropped the verbal score by a point.
Yeah.
So I assume when they retook the GRE, they were like, all right, I need a better quant score, and my verbal's fine or whatever, so I'm not going to sweat the prep on that. Do you think when they submit their score, Graham? So they're submitting a score of whatever it is, 329. Do they need to add in the optional essay that in a previous GRE they actually got a 160 on the verbal, or should they just leave it completely?
I feel like it's not. They don't need to point. It's 1 point different. The overall score of 329 is excellent.
Yeah.
And their GPA, as you point out, is really strong. I don't think they need to do anything. I also think that when the school receives the score report from ETS, they'll see both scores, as far as I understand it. So they'll notice that, and I think some schools actually ask you to list out any tests you've taken and the number of times and results. So, I feel like they don't need to call too much attention to it. I think it's fine. Yeah, and by the way, I did misspeak. UCLA is indeed a member of the consortium too, so it's really only Duke on their list that isn't. And so I guess my point was just that if they're open to applying to schools that are not in the consortium, then yeah, go after some M7. Kellogg, like you said, seems like a logical choice. But yeah, it is interesting. And by the way, Alex, you did the last comment that you made to this person back in June was boosting your GRE further might help.
Oh boy.
Yeah, so they did it, and they came back a couple months later with this better score. I think it's terrific. Yeah.
Yeah, but to my defense, Graham, they said I also intend on retaking the GRE.
Okay, so they were thinking about it.
I didn't suggest they do it. They said they were planning to do it. And again, my response is anytime you get a higher score, it's going to be helpful. So I don't think I steered them wrong with that comment.
Yeah.
But nevertheless, I think they would have been perfectly fine with their 326. Now they have a 329, so that's very good.
Yeah. So again, I think, all things like looking at this profile, 329 GRE, 3.7 GPA, 5 years of work experience in, human capital consulting as well as crisis management consulting. Like, this is an interesting candidate. They have clear career goals. As we said, they're LGBTQ. I feel like there's a lot that they have going for them in terms of, just standing out in a crowded applicant pool, right? So I think this person's going to do well. And I agree with you they probably want to aim maybe, add some additional schools from the M7 group. That would be my big piece of advice to them, and make sure that the schools they're looking at, do well in the domain that they're focused on. So, and I can think of any number of schools, whether it's Kellogg or even Wharton, Harvard. I mean, I don't think any school's off the list for this person.
Right.
So I really want them to aim high. You could even argue, look, they want to land on the West Coast, should they apply to Stanford as well? I mean, it's a great school,
As long as they can answer that first question, Graham, that first essay question is super critical.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I did want to, before we move on to the next candidate, I wanted to point out something that you mentioned about how you like the GPA because it's 4 years of data rather than just a single sitting of an exam. And, there was we were doing an AMA over on Reddit probably a couple weeks ago, I guess, is when we started doing that. And there was someone who kept asking, like, oh, isn't GPA the least important of these factors? And they listed out, like, essays, GMAT score or GRE, and recommendation letters. And then they were like, GPA is the least important, right? They kept, like, insisting on this, like, hierarchy of importance. And I just wanted to point out, I think that's the wrong way to think about this. I really think it more comes down to, you have your academic profile, and in that academic piece is, your GPA, your test score, the caliber of institution that you attended, the major, any trend in your GPA, all that stuff. And the same thing with the test. How many times have you taken it? Have you, been able to improve your score, et cetera? What are the percentiles in the different sections? I mean, there are many, many pieces to an academic profile. Have you done MBA Math or HBS Core Online? Did you do a master's degree? Like, there are a lot of things that go into that. But that in of itself is one pillar of the kind of admissions qualification. And so I wouldn't look to sort of say, oh, test score is more important than GPA. I really think that it depends on the candidate, and you can't build these hierarchies. Like, I also wouldn't argue that, like, essays are the same type. It's like we're not doing apples to apples when we start to say, are essays more important than a GPA? Like, it depends what the essays are. I mean, the essays are about stuff that are really looking to showcase your leadership or teamwork skills or other assets of your, in your candidacy. So anyway, I'll stop there because I don't want to get on too big of a tangent. But do you agree with that? Because I was puzzled by this person.
Well, I have a question back to you, Graham.
Yeah.
What is the most important component of your application?
Oh, this is a trick question because I know you would say it's the weakest part of your file.
Correct.
Yeah.
Not only would I say that, Graham,
yeah,
I wrote it in the book.
Yes.
It's right there.
Yeah.
And you edited it and left it in.
Yeah, no.
So it's correct.
Yeah, no, I agree that for most candidates, it's like whatever your weakest piece is going to be the thing that sort of stands out when we're talking about top schools, obviously.
Yeah.
But it's, so I think paying attention to that is always really important.
I actually think I've seen data, whether it was through when we had a project on DecisionWire or whatever it was, I think I've seen data that shows that the GPA is more predictive of success in admissions than the GMAT.
Yeah.
Don't quote me on that. I just got it in the back of my mind. I saw that at some point.
I know that when I was working admissions at Wharton, there was some data that suggested that GPA was a better predictor of someone's success in the program, like how well they would do in the core curriculum, than the GMAT was. But in any event, interesting stuff. Let's move on and talk about our third candidate because we're running out of time, Alex.
Not so interesting stuff for our third candidate, Graham.
No, we're getting into that right now. Yeah. So this is Wiretap's candidate number 3. So this is someone who also wants to get into school for 22. It's an apply-where entry we received, and they have 5 schools on their target list. They are Cornell, Dartmouth, Duke, NYU, and UVA. And this candidate's been working for 5 years in asset management in New York City. They want to pivot into investment banking and again stay in New York after business school. The GMAT score is a 700, and they have a GPA of 2.9. I did want to just give some folks, again, I know some of you like to sort of keep score at home. So the breakdown on the GMAT is a 67th percentile on the math and an 82nd percentile on the verbal. So those are the numbers. This person writes to us in the comments section or the notes of their post. They said, "Hi, Alex and Graham. I wanted to first start by thanking you both for all the amazing work that you do for us future applicants. I listen to your podcast every Monday, and I'm excited to finally submit my profile. So I wanted to just say that we're thrilled that they listen, and so happy that they got to listen for a while and then submit their profile, and we're getting to review it. So it's pretty cool to be able to do that. But Alex, this candidate doesn't have a ton of ECs. They were involved, a decent involvement while they were in school, but since it's been pretty sparse. They're an East Asian male, so they're overrepresented in the pool, and they're taking MBA math. That's their plan. But what do you make of this candidate? And I think, I'm just going to put it out there that the numbers are low for me.
Yeah.
But what do you make of them?
Yeah, I mean, obviously the candidate knows the GPA is the big sort of elephant in the room in terms of their candidacy. The GMAT 700 is probably slightly below average for their population applying from their industry and so forth. But, 700 is still, overall, it's still a good score, even though I think the quant side you said was a little bit on the lower percentile. Anyway, let's talk about the GPA, Graham, because this is clearly what they're going to need to address in their application. They said they have some family-related issues, which obviously we don't know what that means. But clearly, some folks, unfortunately, as they go through their 4-year undergrad or whatever, they get distracted by a variety of events they have no control over, and it can clearly derail them. And AdCom are going to be sympathetic to that, I think. Or I know they are, to the extent that they recognise that some folks are thrown some dreadful curveballs. But they say they have an upward trajectory, so I'd be quite curious how they did in that final year and stuff like that.
And it's a good school.
Yeah.
Right? Like it's top 20 undergrad according to US News, and they majored in econ.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So hopefully they did well in those sort of high-level classes and stuff like that. And obviously they got into a decent, I'm assuming they got into a decent career, so they must have recruited quite well out of the university, so that must have been quite good. And, let's assume their career in finance has been top-notch. I mean, there's no reason not to assume that, I suppose. But what I struggle with, Graham, is they got a 2.9 GPA. They obviously have some reasons for that, as well as they were very involved during their undergrad. So whether volunteer stuff, leadership stuff, and so on and so forth. But honestly, Graham, in the back of my mind is a little red flag there, because what is the priorities of this candidate? I mean, obviously the family situation is taking them away from their studies. I get that. But what limited time they have to spend on their academic career, it seems like they prioritize non-academic stuff. And in that regard, if I'm an AdCom reader, I'm wondering, well, when you come to our program, are you going to dedicate your time, effort, and energy to the academic piece of it, as well as all the great extracurricular stuff we're going to offer you and the career management stuff? Or are you going to be distracted by all the great extracurricular and career management stuff? So this is a caution to this candidate, but to sort of folks more broadly, it's great that the candidates are fully involved in their undergraduate experience, but only if they're also maintaining a great academic record, or at least in my book, that's what I'd say, Graham.
Yeah, and I think I want to give this person the benefit of the doubt and assume that maybe they have some outside, other outside interests that they're involved in. Because I noted when I was reviewing the profile that they were active in undergrad, like you said, and in fact heavily involved, president of an organization, all that kind of stuff. And then they indicate not much volunteer experience. They do a little bit of pro bono stuff through work. And I thought, well, do they do anything else that might add some color to the candidacy? But I agree that there's this issue around the numbers and the GPA and prioritization. And that's a really important lesson. I also wanted to mention that they indicated that they have this kind of career plan, which involves going from asset management to investment banking, which, that makes a lot of sense to me. But then they mentioned that in the long term, they want to get into teaching. And they said they volunteered at an orphanage during college where they learned to appreciate the importance of education, and they're hoping to contribute as much as they can down the line. And I kind of posted a comment about that, which was, how does that fit with everything you've done to date? They have this one volunteer experience as an undergrad, but I just don't understand the teaching piece. And I think you pointed out to them, okay, maybe they want to open a school or something, but they got to figure out a way to weave this together. And I'm just trying to figure out how does, finance, asset management, investment banking somehow fit with a long-term plan in education. And, I don't know. I was like noodling on this, and I'm just wondering if like, do they want to sort of help ed tech companies, go public, or is there something, that combines finance and education where they can make a big impact? Because right now it risks sounding like, okay, I'm a finance guy or gal, and I don't really have a lot of track record in education, but I want to teach in the long term, and it comes across as kind of like, I realize that banking doesn't sound very, you know, uh, whatever the word is, doing good.
Altruistic.
Thank you, altruistic. And so I'm going to throw in something into my file that makes me seem more altruistic or
Yeah.
something. So I just worry that, and I'm not saying that that's the case here, but I worry that an admissions reader could have that perception,
Yeah.
and that's always dangerous. So yeah, there's a lot here. I feel like, again, work experience seems great. Goals in the short term, investment banking makes sense. I think they need to work on the long term goal. As to the test score, I actually suggested that they write an essay about their GPA and why it was low, et cetera, and that for the test score, I mean, I'm inclined to sort of maybe encourage them to retake the test right after they submit their file, so that they could provide a second score to the schools to which they're applying. Because right now, my view is when you have a sub 3.0 GPA, you're sort of obligated to do as well as you possibly can on the GMAT. And, often that means like a great big GMAT score, but at minimum, it means taking it more than once if you have a score that's below.
Yeah.
So I'm worried.
I think you make very good point that I hadn't even thought of, Graham. Let's assume that their target school is Johnson. I mean, they've listed some other schools too, but Johnson seems right in their wheelhouse, in their sort of focus on investment banking and so forth. They submit an application. They got the 700 on the GMAT. They've got this GPA that they know is a concern. They've done MBA math, which is very good. So they check that box. That's very good. But let's say in the optional essay, they write their explanation to their GPA. They be very forthright and upfront to say that they recognise this is going to be a major concern. I've done X and Y, i.e. MBA math. I'm retaking the GMAT, and then give the scheduled date and make sure that scheduled date is within the time frame prior to when they would ordinarily be releasing interview invite decisions. That might well be a smart little tactic, Graham.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think that was where I was going with it. It's like, hey, I understand they want to focus on the essays, get them all in, get your apps in early,
Yeah.
and then buckle down and take the test again and really work hard to get a high score. Maybe that means hiring a tutor, whatever they need to do to get it done.
Yeah.
Because this candidate would be more appealing with a better score, I think.
Yeah, and we might ordinarily say wait till round two and get that better score, but they've also recognised that they're part of an overrepresented group.
Yeah.
So that's why they're probably correct. Round one's going to be helpful.
Right, agree. And then the last thing I would say is they did mention that, if they're not successful this cycle, that they're going to apply again next year.
Yeah.
I did, I was kind of thinking about, gee, are there other options for them in terms of business schools? And because right now they have a list of schools that are, they're all pretty top schools. They're all kind of top 16 programs. And I was thinking, are there schools out there that could help them achieve their goals in finance, but that may, be willing to take someone with a 2.9, 700, or maybe they boost the score a little bit. But and I was thinking about, Tepper has a great program, pretty strong in finance too, particularly, computational finance and stuff. Georgetown's another option that came to mind, Indiana, and then even a kind of wild card of London Business School, like going overseas, doing their MBA in London, maybe even getting an iBanking job in London, which is a pretty good place for that too. So there are other options out there that they may want to think about. But obviously, if they're just saying, look, I got to go to a very, very top school, and I'm only applying to this small number of schools, and I'll just reapply next year, that's fine too. But I just wanted to mention that there might be other options as well.
Perfect.
Yeah, so I want to thank that person for their post. Really great that they've been able to tune in and find this show helpful. Alex, thanks so much for picking out the profiles. As always, it's a pleasure to talk through these candidates with you. And yeah, I guess we'll do it again in 1 week's time if you're willing.
Very good. Best of luck, everyone.